I am Marilyn Monroe. Some of you met me in a white dress above a subway grate, frozen in a moment the world never let me forget. Some of you met me in black and white, smiles, curls, a wink that hid weather. But before the billboards, before the diamonds and jokes about blondes, there was Norma Jeane, a little girl learning how to survive rooms that didn't know how to love her. I was born Norma Jeane Mortensen in Los Angeles, June 1st, 1926. My mother, Gladys, was a woman made of glass, beautiful, reflective, and breakable in places the world didn't bother to see. My father was a story no one told me straight. I learned early that family could be a verb you do for yourself when nouns fail you. Foster homes taught me the language of carefulness, how to hold a smile like a tray, how to measure the mood in a room by the way a door latch clicks, how to find the corner of the bed where the springs don't complain. When adults are storms, children become weather forecasters. I watched, I adjusted, I survived. I found church, and in church, I found singing. I wasn't a trained voice. I was an honest one. Notes lifted me out of the cheap seats of my own life. I learned that a song is a promise you keep for 3 minutes, to be the truth and the beauty at the same time. War work and warehouses, rivets and shifts. I tied scarves over curls and learned angles from machines. A photographer came to the factory to capture the women helping the war effort. He captured me instead, sunlight on a cheekbone I didn't know could speak. The camera looked at me like a person who had been listening the whole time. Modeling came like a fast bus. I jumped on and pretended I'd been running toward it for years. I learned the alchemy of light, how to turn a chin a fraction and invent a new mood, how to drop a shoulder and become an invitation, how to meet the lens with softness and leave with power. They paid me to be a picture. I was busy becoming a person. Hollywood did what it always does. It smiled with teeth. Contracts, screen tests, lessons in walking like an idea. I changed my name because they said a star needs a name like a bell. Clear, ringing, unforgettable. Marilyn Monroe. 2 M's. Like 2 hands holding a face up to light. My early roles were seconds long and sugar sweet, the pretty girl who tilted scenes like a lampshade. But I had a secret the studios didn't expect. I read. Chekhov and Rilke lived in my apartment between lipsticks and scripts. I underlined sentences the way other girls underlined admirers. I wanted to make people laugh, yes, but I wanted to break their hearts right afterward and hand them back the pieces arranged like a bouquet. They typed me as a bombshell. Bombshells explode. I preferred to bloom. There's a difference. Explosions are loud. Blooming is patient. I studied comedy's music, the half beat before a punchline, the breath that turns sugar into sparkle. I learned to play dumb like a violin, on purpose, with still, so I could smuggle intelligence into a world that wasn't looking for it. Gentlemen prefer blondes, handed me diamonds and a song the world wouldn't stop humming. Diamonds are a girl's best friend, looked like glitter. It felt like commentary. The choreography was a smile with subtext. My pink dress was a highlighter pen underlining the absurdities we all agreed to pretend were romantic. I wasn't mocking men. I was mirroring them. And we all laughed, some knowingly, some not. The 7-year itch gave me air up a skirt and a cage shaped like a laugh. The famous shot on the subway grate wasn't an accident. It was architecture. They built a world where I was both spectacle and suspect. I gave them what they wanted and stole what I needed: timing, control, a sense of myself that didn't evaporate under applause. But glamour is a loan with high interest. The studio machine sold a version of me I couldn't afford to live inside forever. I was late to set sometimes. Anxiety doesn't check call sheets. I asked for more takes because I knew jokes can be almost right, and almost right is the enemy of perfect. They called it difficult. Men called the same thing meticulous. So I left. Imagine that. America's blonde leaving the people who dyed her. I went to New York, to the actor studio, to Lee Strasberg, to a room where the point wasn't being adored, it was being true. Method acting taught me how to peel myself carefully, to find the nerve under the habit, to speak from the place that shakes and doesn't apologize for shaking. I wanted to be the kind of actress you feel 2 days later when washing dishes. Bus stops surprised them. Marilyn can act, they wrote, as if I hadn't been acting every day of my life just to survive. In Some Like It Hot, I put sugar in the air and sadness underneath it. Comedy is tragedy wearing sequins. I let sugar cane sparkle until you noticed the ache behind her eyes, and then I made you laugh anyway. The boys in dresses got the marquee joke. I got the melody. People loved my marriages like they were movies. Joe DiMaggio, America's Quiet Thunder. Arthur Miller, A Mind Like Snowfall. I loved them honestly, if imperfectly. Joe wanted a safe harbor. I was a sea. Arthur wanted a muse. I wanted a mirror. The spotlight is warm on stage and cold in a kitchen. We tried. We failed the way humans do, bravely, messily, while promising ourselves a better second act. Reporters asked for secrets. Here's one. I turned loneliness into light. I learned how to stand in front of 100 people and feel seen, and later stand in front of one person and feel invisible, and keep breathing through both. Pills helped. Sometimes they hurt. Sleep was a country I had trouble getting into with the passports I'd been given. In private, I wrote little poems, notes to myself, riddles to future me. I am good, but not an angel. I do sin, but I am not the devil. I practiced not apologizing for being a woman who wanted everything: brains and beauty, laughter and depth, applause and truth. The world likes its women to be one thing at a time. I was several things at once. They asked me to sing Happy Birthday to a president. I was a whisper in a dress made of starlight. People said scandal. I said performance. The country loves a fairy tale until the princess writes her own script. If you want to know me, don't start with the posters. Start with the pause between my laugh and my answer. Start with the way my hand rests on a piano like it remembers work. Start with the outtakes. Me missing a line and looking at the crew with eyes that say, I know I'm more than this joke. Help me prove it. Start with the girl in a shared bedroom hoping her mother remembers her name today and learning to be her own parent just in case. Fame made me a mirror. People loved themselves in me, their desire, their jokes, their rescue fantasies, their warnings. I tried to love them back by being generous with charm and careful with wounds. I didn't always get it right, but I showed up on sets, for friends, for causes that believed women could be more than frames for a man's photograph. I'm not done telling you. The story doesn't end with the phone call that becomes the headline. That's not an ending, it's an interruption. If you listen past it, you'll hear the part I want you to keep. A woman, born into a storm, learning to make her own weather, to light her own set, and direct her own heart towards something like joy. My name is Marilyn. The icon was an accident. The work? That was on purpose. New York was a doorway with weather on the other side. I walked through it because Los Angeles had taught me how to smile. New York promised to teach me how to feel without asking permission. The actor's studio, learning to breathe on purpose. Lee Strasberg didn't look at me like an ornament. He looked at me like a puzzle I was capable of solving. The room smelled like coffee and terror, the good kind, the kind that says you might discover a part of yourself you've been avoiding. We did exercises that seemed ridiculous until they hurt in that helpful way. Sense memory, substitution. What does this line feel like in your bones? Lee would ask. I wanted to answer with honesty, not charm. Paula Strasberg sat with me between takes and rehearsals, a lighthouse with a clipboard. We built rituals, breath, a private word, a tiny motion only I could see that told me I was real when the set felt like a dream, with the volume turned up. Acting method wasn't a cult to me. It was a craft, not a way to drown, a way to swim deeper without panicking. Bus stop, cracking the mold from the inside. When bus stop arrived, I saw a woman I understood. Shy, stubborn, hopeful, fragile like paper, easy to crease, hard to tear. I gave her my tremble and my teeth. The critics use my name and the word actress in the same sentence like they just discovered gravity. I didn't say, finally. I said thank you to the part for trusting me, to the work for not abandoning me when the lights got loud. Some Like It Hot, comedy with a pulse. Then came Some Like It Hot, sugar sprinkled on top of a joke that tasted like survival. Billy Wilder was precise like a surgeon and wicked like a good secret. Jack and Tony wore dresses. I wore the audience on my heartbeat. Timing is architecture. A half beat too soon, and the building leans. A half beat too late, and the roof collapses. We found the beat by listening, not to the room, but to the ache under the laugh. People remember my oops with lines, the retakes, the stories about how many times I asked for sugars here. They forget that perfection is a raft I demanded we build before we put the audience in the river. I knew what I wanted each joke to cost. Not just noise, but empathy. When we rapped, even cynics smiled. Comedy had told the truth and gotten away with it. The Men I Married. Love letters with footnotes. Joe was a hallway with baseball banners and quiet hung like a hat on every hook. He wanted a home without flashblums, a kitchen where dinner meant privacy as a sacrament. I loved him for his gravity. He loved me for my light. Gravity and light make planets together. They also make eclipses. The famous dress over the subway grate wasn't a flirtation. It was a fuse. He hated the crowd's eyes on me. I understood. It still hurt. We tried to tuck our jagged edges into the same drawer. The drawer broke. Arthur wrote rooms that could fit 10 ideas and one woman. He saw the little girl in me, and the reader, and the comedian, and the ghosts who sometimes stood in my place when I was tired. We read Chekhov out loud at night and argued kindly about endings. He loved my intelligence like it was his discovery. I needed him to love it like it was mine. He wrote a character that felt too much like me and too less than me. We both committed the usual crimes of marriage. Expecting rescue where we needed respect, asking silence to say what a sentence could if we dared speak it. I forgave them. I hope they forgave me. Our love stories weren't failures, they were drafts. Some drafts teach you what not to cut. The studio system, a smile with the ledger. The studio kept accounts. Publicity owed me glamour, glamour owed the studio gross receipts. My real self owed everybody an invoice I never agreed to. I pushed back. I formed Marilyn Monroe Productions to bargain for scripts that had nerves. They called me foolish. Men have called themselves producers for less. I negotiated like a woman who had been told, be grateful, too many times. I asked for better pay, better parts, better hours, better say. But the image, they said, as if I were a poster that had learned to walk. I told them the image could learn to act. On being late, the truth you never got. They say I was late. Sometimes I was. Anxiety is a room with no oxygen. I'd memorize, drill, breathe, and still my body would lurch. Cameras magnify everything, even fear. Paula would study me, Billy would sigh. I would nail it on take 30 and apologize with my eyes for needing that many steps to arrive at exactly where the audience deserved me to be. Precision is a kindness to the people who paid to forget their lives for 2 hours. If it took me time to find kindness, I took it. The girl and the ghost. By day, I could be a photograph that smiled on time. By night, I could be a notebook that asked good questions. I wrote thoughts on envelopes and hotel stationery. Help me not to be casual about life, I scribbled. The world loves women who stay casual about their brilliance. I wanted to be serious, even when I wore sparkle. Women are taught to apologize for radiance. I was busy learning not to. New York lessons, a city that doesn't clap for free. I loved that. It made every little victory honest. A scene grounded, a director's nod, a stranger's kind glance that didn't feel like a purchase. I'd walk Central Park and watch couples. You learn to act by watching people who forgot they're being seen. I saved faces like photographs in my head for future roles. The woman who pinches her ring finger when she lies. The boy who grins before he cries. The man who talks to his shoes because they don't interrupt. On Happy Birthday, Mr. President. I know. The dress, the whisper, the flashblums. Fine. Here's the part you missed. I rehearsed breath. The acoustics were odd. The room was more rumor than space. I performed a joke about intimacy in a room full of watchers. It wasn't scandal to me. It was theater. If the country wanted a fairy tale, I could sing one in a key the newspapers couldn't print without blushing. Friends, not fans. I kept a circle. Photographers who were artists, not thieves. Makeup artists who knew that powder is punctuation, not camouflage. A few women who didn't need me to be anything but tired sometimes. We made soups, not headlines. I laughed hardest off camera. I cried there too, when the day needed washing. The body as a battlefield. A woman's body is a country where other people think they have voting rights. Costumes measured not just inches, but intentions. I learned to say no. I learned to say yes on my terms. I learned to eat. I learned to not eat. I learned that confidence and hunger look the same in certain dresses and should not be confused. The camera wants openness. The world wants access. I owed the first. I never promised the second. Why I fought for scripts with blood in them. I didn't want to be the joke. I wanted to tell it with love and teeth. Scripts arrived thick with assumption. I asked for rewrites like a woman who believed the audience deserved more than winks. Sometimes I lost that fight. Sometimes I won a line that surprised even me. I kept a private list of scenes where I had managed to sneak the truth past the guards. Work as a shelter. When the rest got loud,
gossip, headlines, men writing me in pencil so they could erase the parts they didn't like, work was a house that always let me in. Learn the song, find the breath, hit the mark. Listen to the actor in front of you like they are a stranger you might fall in love with if they tell the next sentence right. The set, for all its chaos, had rules. The world outside had opinions. Letters I never sent. I wrote to the little girl, Norma Jeane, more often than to the men. I told her we did not survive for applause. We survived for choice. I told her she was allowed to talk back to the mirror. I told her there's a difference between being looked at and being seen, and to keep choosing rooms where the second happens, even if they pay less. When fame turns from spotlight to sunburn. Attention is warm until it burns. Photographers crouch in bushes count as wildlife in my story. Explanations turned into sport. If I said yes to one interview, 10 strangers wrote 11 versions of what I meant. So I said less and made more. The silence taught me something. The audience hears you clearer when you speak on screen. Off screen, I tried to practice kindness with a door that learned how to close gently.
Returning to the camera with a new spine. Back from New York, I stood on sets with a different posture. Not arrogant, anchored. I asked for partners, not bosses. I didn't win every argument. I did win myself. There are scenes from those years that feel like a handshake between my mouth and my mind. Comedy that doesn't insult me, glamour that doesn't erase me, vulnerability that isn't a circus act. What you didn't see on the call sheet. I visited hospitals quietly. Children watched me like a television they were allowed to touch. I let them touch the fabric and keep the smile. I learned to sign my name in a way that made it a blessing, not a brand. I donated to things without telling the papers because the papers thought generosity was only interesting if it flirted. If you want to understand me, watch the eyes. The eyes tell you which woman is on screen. The survivor, the student, the clown, the romantic, the strategist, the little girl, the tired one, the stubborn one. I let them all act. The trick is not to blend them, it's to conduct them, like an orchestra that knows when the violin should weep and the trumpet should wait. I am Marilyn Monroe. I can be a poster and a poem in the same breath. New York taught me the poem. Hollywood never quite forgave me for learning it, but the audience did. They knew. They always know. That's why I kept risking the truth in sequence. It sneaks past defenses better dressed as a song. I'm not finished. There's the ache and the quiet catastrophe. And the way we talk about women as if their endings are the most interesting thing about them. There's what happened, and there's what I want you to keep. Hold still. I'll tell you the rest. Fame is a mirror with fingerprints. Everyone touches, few clean. Mental health, rooms without air. There are days when your body feels like an understudy for your mind. I learned the choreography of panic, a heart that sprints in a sitting room, hands rehearsing tremors, a voice that can sing on cue and still forgets how to order breakfast. Doctors had bottles, Hollywood had opinions. I had evenings that needed surviving. Sleep became a gate guarded by thoughts that didn't like my face. I knocked with prayers, with pills, with pages from books I'd already underlined twice. Some nights I won, some nights I waited for the sun like a stage cue. Press and paparazzi, noise that wants to be music. Reporters could turn a whisper into thunder. They named me like weather. bombshell, sex symbol, scandal. These were forecasts, not facts. I learned that you can't sue a rumor for libel. You can only outlive it by telling better stories on screen and by making gentleness stubborn. A camera can be a kiss or a theft. I tried to teach photographers the difference with my eyes. Some learned, the rest got a photograph and not my permission. Becoming an icon, a crown that doesn't fit indoors. People called me an icon as if it were a promotion. It felt more like a museum with velvet ropes. Icons aren't allowed bad days. They are supposed to be statues who never need soup. I wanted to be a woman who could burn soup and still be loved. I studied my own image like a stranger. How did she walk? What did she owe? Could she ever trip without an obituary? I learned to forgive the poster for stealing oxygen from the person. That forgiveness was hard work. Work that drew blood, the right kind. I chased scripts with blood in them, characters who wanted something that hurt to want. Comedy, yes, but with pulse. Women who are funny because they are brave, not because they are foolish. I fought for lines that told the truth quietly, and for silences that did the shouting. Sometimes studios said no, sometimes the audience said louder yeses than both of us. On set, I listened for the click inside the scene, the one that says now. I didn't mind 30 takes if the 31st held honesty in its mouth and let it go at the right temperature. Perfection isn't snobbery, it's hospitality to the viewer who paid with their time. Friends, teachers, witnesses. Paula and Lee gave me language for nerves. Photographers like Avedon and Green gave me light that didn't lie. A few women gave me Fridays with soup and no makeup. Joe later gave me apology in the shape of protection. Arthur gave me a library even when we couldn't share the same page anymore. Kindness appears in costumes you don't expect. The body politics. Studios negotiated my waist like a treaty. I learned that a dress can be a cage even when it sparkles. I fed myself when I remembered I was human first. I starved when I forgot. I trained my posture to carry gowns and my spine to carry no. My favorite compliment wasn't beautiful, it was present. Loneliness with company. I could drown in a room full of people who knew my name. Fame attracts spectators. Loneliness requires witnesses. I kept a notebook for the thoughts that didn't want to be public. Please don't make me a joke I can't live inside, I wrote once, and then made a joke the next day because laughter lets you breathe on busy streets. Kindness as a rebellion. I sent checks quietly. I visited wards without photographers. I remembered the names of crew who held the boom and the coffee. I remembered birthdays. I mailed thank you notes in lipstick colors I could not wear to court. In a world that wanted drama, kindness was my scandal. The past is a place, not a sentence. Norma Jeane lived in my bones like a permanent address. When I felt lost, I wrote to her. We made it into rooms they said were locked. We can leave them too. If I cried, I tried to cry like rain, cleaning something on its way down. Cultural gravity. They plastered my smile on billboards and arguments. Feminists argued whether I was a caution or a cause. Men argued over whether I was theirs to argue over. Meanwhile, girls learned that softness can be strategy and that a laugh can be a lever. If my image taught anyone to ask for more than applause, good. If it taught them to accept less, then let the rest of my story correct that. What I wanted to keep. A woman can be clever in pink. A joke can be a rescue. Glamour without tenderness is taxidermy. Gentleness is not weakness, it's control with manners. You may start life as a secret, you get to end it as a sentence you write. The last act is coming.
Newspapers prefer endings. I prefer messages. There will be a phone call, and there will be mourners who never met me, and people who knew I collected books like talismans. But before the curtain, I want to hand you something you can use after the credits roll. Hold still. Breathe with me. I'll finish.
The end of a life should not be the whole of a story. Mine closed suddenly, and headlines did what headlines do: turn a woman into an event. Treat that part with care. There were doctors and doubts, pills that were meant to help, nights that were longer than their clocks. There were friends who tried, and rumors that never did. Handle the details softly. Other hearts lived there too. Here is what I want you to keep. I was kind when it wasn't fashionable. I was thoughtful when I was paid to be shiny. I made men laugh and then reminded them to listen. I made women laugh and then reminded them to lead. I learned that softness is a strategy, timing is a theology, and beauty without curiosity is an empty room. If you watch me on screen, look for the pivot, the split second when the joke lands and the truth follows. That was my craft. If you read my notes, look for the fighting, the places I argue with despair and win by inches. That was my courage. They called me an icon. I prefer evidence. I formed Marilyn Monroe Productions to control my work. I trained with Strasberg to control my craft. I fought for scripts with blood in them to control my meaning. I treated crews like colleagues to control my culture. To the girl who thinks she must choose between brain and beauty, don't. To the boy who thinks humor makes him smaller, it makes you dangerous in the right way. To anyone who grew up learning to read a room for weather, you can become the storm that waters gardens instead of ruining picnics. Remember me not for the dress over the grate, but for the breath before the laugh, and the thought after it. My name was Marilyn. I was several true things at once. Hold me that way.